Before we start the Grapple Asia podcast episode, we want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors and people that support us. Softspot.Açaí. Kat has a little store now in Tonglo, and they do some incredible acai. It's sugar-free, no preservatives, and they have little pop-ups around the place. They had a little pop-up in Paragraph and M-Quartier recently, but they're mainly based in Tonglo. They're available on Grab as well, and they do some great dairy hybrid options as well, and their nut butters are incredible. The pistachio one I highly recommend personally. Our sponsor is fightaesthetic.asia, and if you use code Grapple Asia, you'll get 10% off everything except from the alpha gi. So thank you to Aesthetic for always supporting us, and we actually do also supply them in Thailand with free shipping as well.
พิซซ่าไอศครีมเสิร์ฟโปะมาแบบนี้เลยเหรอครับแล้วจะกินยังไงรสชาติจะเข้ากันไหมเนี่ยจริงๆแล้วที่เขาโปะไปเนี่ยไม่ใช่ไอศครีมจริงๆหรอกครับจะเป็นตัวครีมชีสมูสรสชาติจะออกเปรี้ยวหวานมันครับก่อนกินเนี่ยเราก็ละเลงมันให้ทั่วเลยครับตัวพิซซ่าเนี่ยจะเป็นพิซซ่าเปปเปอโรนีนะครับพอได้ชิมแล้วเนี่ยเข้ากันดีนะครับครบรสดีเปรี้ยวหวานมันเค็มครับแปลกใหม่ดีตัวโคนก็มากินกรอบๆครับนอกจากอันนี้พิซซ่าอื่นก็น่ากินครับอย่างถาดเนี้ยจะเป็นบูโกกิชิคาโกพิซซ่าครับตัวหน้าเขาจะเป็นสไตล์เกาหลีนะครับหน้าแน่นแป้งหนานุ่มครับจุดเด่นของเขาเลยคือเรื่องชีสนี่แหละครับให้มาเยอะมากแบบสะใจอ่ะแล้วทุกถาดจะใช้เป็นแป้งพิซซ่าแบบชาเขียวครับได้กลิ่นหอมอยู่เบาๆนะส่วนจานนี้เป็นพาสต้าซีฟู้ดโรสซอสครับให้ทะเลมาจัดเต็มซอสเข้มข้นนัวๆครับไก่ทอดก็เป็นตัวท็อปอีกตัวเลยนะครับจานใหญ่เนื้อกรอบฉ่ำในท็อปปิ้งแน่นครับร้านนี้คือร้านพิซซ่ามารุครับร้านพิซซ่าไก่ทอดร้านดังจากเกาหลีเมนูเขาจะเป็นอาหารฟิวชั่นราคาเริ่มต้นประมาณ 2-300 บาทครับเมนูเยอะอยู่นะครับมาเนี่ยเลือกไม่ถูกเลยแนะนำให้มากันหลายคนจะได้ลองสั่งมากินหลายๆอย่างครับมีสาขาแรกและสาขาเดียวในไทยตอนนี้อยู่ที่เซ็นทรัลเวิลด์ชั้น 7 นะครับ
A shout out to our sponsor, creontes.com, the memetic lifestyle band in grappling and performance sports. They create stylish jiu-jitsu apparel with a twist of humor, and they've built quite a cult following and community as well. If you use the discount code Grapple Asia, you'll get 10% off all orders, and give them a follow as well on Chief Creonte. And again, the website name is creontes.com. So this is the Grapple Asia interview or podcast, and I'm with Shaun, who's the former head strength and conditioning coach from Tiger Muay Thai, Apollo Gym, and now he's actually working out of Phuket Grappling Academy, working with professional fighters, athletes, and grapplers. So Shaun, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate being here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. So you've got quite an unconventional start in life. You end up becoming like a full adult roughly around 14 when you moved to Darwin, basically. And then you were just doing work until, was it the 2000s when you decided to join the military? Mm-hmm. And you're doing, is it professional or semi-professional rugby?
Rugby. It was amateurs at that stage, mm-hmm. building into the professional avenue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a part in the podcast, the Life Led podcast, quite a long episode, and you're discussing how you like where you said you were kind of like self-aware about the level you were at in terms of doing the rugby, so you decided to join the military instead. Why do you think you're so self-aware at that age?
Well, I think a lot of it is introspective, looking back, and mm-hmm. Not kind of understanding exactly what was going on at the time, but looking back and going, I feel like I made the right decision. It was kind of an intuitive decision to, I knew I could have made it as a professional rugby player, mm-hmm. but the amount of work needed to get there and the amount of work that I'd already put in and the level that I was playing at and the guys that I was competing against week in, week out, mm-hmm. And I had a couple of injuries also. I wanted to join the military. It was always in the back of my mind before I moved to Sydney and had a scholarship down there. So just kind of got to the point where I was like, well, I'll either go left or I go right here. And I decided to go right and join the military instead of pursuing the rugby background or the rugby career. In saying that, one of the reasons when I joined the army, I was told that there's likelihood that you'll get a chance to play rugby as well. So that was get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. That's good. So you did 3 tours. First it was Iraq, then it was East Timor as peacekeeping, and then it was Afghanistan finally as well. And it kind of like, Iraq was kind of like practice run, you said, and then and East Timor was more peacekeeping in that time as well. You got a lot of training in terms of like earning like qualifications for being a sniper, for example. Mm-hmm. And then eventually it was almost like the main. Well, you don't want to say main event when you're in an actual horrible conflict zone in Afghanistan.
We can say that, bro.
Yeah,
it was the main event. Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you, like, you went into sniper training, and what does that involve?
It's a long process. You need to be selected. You need to be nominated by your section commanders, leaders, to go into a pool of guys that then goes into a pre-course, and then you basically got hammered for 2 weeks on physical fitness, mental resilience, navigation. Just essentially try to break us down to see if we were ready to take on the snipers course. And then we began the course with 7 people, and I think we went for about 8 weeks. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. But yeah, probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. And it involved obviously shooting. People think being a sniper is pulling the trigger. I mean, that's the last piece of the puzzle. You need to be a good soldier. You need good camouflage, concealment. You need good soldier skills, navigation. You need to be a good team player as well. So it was kind of the height of soldiering for the level that I was at the time. So 7 guys started the course and 3 finished, and I was one of the lucky 3 to get through.
And how do you think, was it 5 years in the military?
6.
6 years. During that 6-year period, what do you think you learned from going through those 3 tours and just serving in the military?
I learned that operating in small teams, people rely on you, and you need to be proficient. They need to be proficient. Competence is one of those things that's earned, it's not given. It was a culmination of all of the ethos and values that the military brought into my life: discipline, resilience, teamwork, loyalty, integrity. All that type of stuff was basically on full display when we went into our 4-man sniper teams. Once we got into the teams and then deployed to Afghanistan, it was game on.
Yeah. So do you think training in it and competing in a team sport like rugby can help you kind of work with other people as well?
For sure. I learned, because I left home at 14, I went into the workforce. I realized very quickly that other people relied on me and they couldn't do their job unless I did my job, and vice versa. So that gave me, I came from a pretty chaotic childhood. So going into the military gave me a different type of discipline, where I was working with grown men in, the building supplies industry, very laborious job. I think that set me up for later on in life joining the military and giving me a different type of discipline and mindset that served me really well later on in my rugby career and then in my army career. Yeah.
And then you ended up in Tasmania for a few years, earning qualifications, etc. And then you did a lot of traveling around the world. What was it? You said you stopped in and out of Thailand on the way west, then on the way back towards Australia. What was it, do you think, about Thailand that you gravitated towards?
I don't know if I can put my finger on the one thing. I know a lot of people that have come to Thailand, especially Phuket, especially Soi Thai, Fitness Street, Fighter Street, whatever they want to call it. It's for those that don't know, it's 1.6 kilometers long, and there's probably like 12 to 15 gyms on the street. The whole place is dedicated towards health and fitness, and it's a destination. It's one of the few places in the world where people come just to train, and you can be at any level. You can, come over here and go through a weight loss program. A number of people have come over to break drug addictions or, go through the divorce process or whatever it might be. A lot of people are coming over here to, chase their dream of fighting as a professional. And then you've got guys that are coming out here that are, starting fight camps, finishing fight camps, and everything in between. So yeah, it's an interesting place, and it's something that always, the energy, the vibe, it always kind of pulled me back in. I visited the first time in 2013 when I was a month into a trip around the world over 7 months, and then came back later on that year. And then the subsequent years I returned before I moved here in 2017. So
yeah.
It was kind of always calling my name.
I remember back in 2015, 2016, I went down to Phuket because my uncle was living there at the time. I remember the street only had a few gyms. I think there was maybe, like you said, Tiger, there's Phuket Top Team at the time as well, and a few other fitness places and restaurants. And I went down this January actually for a leg lock camp over at Phuket Grappling Academy with a couple of really awesome Polish guys. And then when I went back down there, just like everything just seemed so much more condensed. It was crazy. And it actually gave me a little bit of anxiety when it was like that crowded, like driving through the road.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy, man. I've seen because I've been on the ground for 7.5 years, I've seen like the character of the soy change multiple times. So it's been interesting to watch it bounce back after COVID, and the soy's always got a place in my heart, but I've been burnt by a few people there recently. So
don't know how much you want to get into that, but
not really.
Okay, no problem. So the next thing I want to get into is, so you ended up going into Tiger Muay Thai as an intern, and then within a month, basically, you're strength and conditioning, and then a few months after that, you're head S&C. So basically, in terms of that, I wanted to just ask what like a typical work schedule as head S&C coach was at Tiger. I mean, did you have to teach like let's say fitness classes or fitness blocks, a lot of PT one-to-ones and stuff like that as well? Just wanted to know what like a typical work week was like for you.
Yeah, every week was different, but also the same. It's a very transient place.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are coming through for only a couple of days a week, month at a time. So in terms of PTs, it was regular people. I had fighters as well. Obviously, when I first got there, I came from a rugby background, military background, but I didn't have a combat sports background myself. So it was a little bit of a uphill battle to, get buy-in from some of the professional athletes there, which I understand. And that's kind of what led me down the road to having my own MMA fight. I'm sure we'll discuss that later, but my job was to oversee and run the fitness department, ensure that my coaches delivered a high quality product to the clients, customers that were coming in, paying good money to come and train at Tiger as a destination. So I ensured that I ran PT development sessions every week, coaches development sessions with all the coaches that I had, and I had interns and guest coaches on rotation in the system, having a look at people, what they brought to the table, what they brought to the team, so that if I did need to employ somebody, I had a short list of people that I could get into the system. So, the goal was to build a performance institute for professional athletes. I tried for 6 years whilst I was there. It didn't really work out. I won't go into too much detail there. Otherwise I'll stop naming names.
What I found, like when I was listening to the podcast as well, obviously, like sports like rugby, American football, even wrestling in the USA, for example, they all have a very long-standing tradition, and obviously their strength and conditioning programs are they're run to a T. Everything's done super professionally. Everything's evolving, but there is a kind of like a standard in how you do it, obviously. And you'd think that coming from like a rugby background and knowing what it takes to be a professional athlete in that kind of realm, like fighters would just automatically be like, okay, he knows what he's doing, basically. And obviously, you were talking about obviously with fighters as well. Most fighters that are doing fighting, especially back in the day, the pay wasn't that great, obviously. So I guess they had a bit more of a kind of like, I don't know how to say it. More
less of a season. More like I'm fighting to make money. So
exactly, and then they would kind of go
a roof over my head.
Yeah, exactly. Like an up, like until they make it to like a certain level. Obviously, they won't get paid regularly. They'd go up and down, up and down. And obviously, you see like a really extreme example of that would be like Paddy Pimblett. When he cuts weight, he cuts down and he does really well. But then off season, you see how much he blew up and stuff like that. And I feel like when you're young, you kind of get away with it, and when you don't, like. It's just like
it catches up.
Yeah, it catches up eventually. And even with Connor, once you start getting a little bit older, he couldn't go down to 145 anymore. And you were trying to implement a training periodization where like there was not like they're training like redlining the whole time, but they had kind of like a very consistent program where when they came back into their camp, they were ready and you were ready to get the best out of them for a fight day, for example. I just wanted to ask, why do you think there was trouble trying to implement something like that, especially when you're coming from like a professional sport background?
Well, to be honest, probably the biggest problem that I've run into and why I tried to implement this all year round periodized training, nutrition, recovery program is because, the first 6 months or a year on the ground, I just saw over and over and over again these professional athletes that were,
professional.
Man, like, where I come from, to be a professional, you need to tick the boxes, you need to meet the prerequisites, you need to, show up, show out, and be a good teammate as well.
Yeah.
But it seems out here anyone can just call themselves a professional and don't have any professional, never been part of a professional outfit, never had that professional experience, had good coaches that have, taught them this is right, this is wrong, this is how you periodize, this is why. So, I tried to implement a system that would get these athletes training all year round.
Yeah. But then
so that when they start fight camp, it is fight camp, it's not fat camp.
Yeah,
that's what I saw all the time, man. Is people would fight and they'd be hammering themselves twice a day. They would dial in on training, nutrition, recovery, etc. And then once they finish their fight, you don't see them for 2 months.
Exactly.
And then they roll back in the gym and they're overweight, and it's like, all right, well, the next fight camp is fat camp. Like they're just focused on losing weight rather than improving skills and game planning and all that type of stuff. So,
do you think that culture's changing now? I mean, obviously,
sorry. Well, I'm trying to. There's good people that are trying to change that, but it's one of those things, man. It's tradition. We're in Thailand, so the old school rules still apply, and
I think
it's an uphill battle.
Yeah, especially like you said, Phuket's a very transient place as well. So it's like they're going to come in for a training camp and then they're going to leave, right? And one of the reasons why I think people like coming to Phuket to train, especially, is because you have this contract between like a beach island paradise with extreme hard training. So like that kind of like balance is really is really good. That contrast is really good. So I think that's one of the reasons why they come. But obviously most fighters aren't here all year round. They're back in their native country, because I don't think there's a lot of Thai native professional UFC or MMA fighters right now. And as you can see from the ONE FC card, it's mostly like Muay Thai fights on a Friday, for example, as well. So I think trying to get people to buy into like Jiu-Jitsu and MMA is quite different. And obviously the Muay Thai culture is very different as well, right? And how they train. Because I think I've heard some stories where I've spoken to some professional athletes or grapplers from the US, for example, and they were telling me like they had to go and help the Muay Thai fighters who are like marquee fights, not cutting weight properly, or they're just wearing a bin bag and they're running.
Yeah, man.
So
that's something that kind of drives my coaching philosophy is, I don't need to have all of the answers. I just need to know more than that person knows and go, well, that's fucking stupid, man. Like there's much better ways to do that. And this is why we do it this way, because I understand, physiology, biology. So yeah, it's been an uphill battle, but I think the right people are listening.
Yeah. I think one of the problems is as well, because there's like, it's mixed martial arts. So it's like different disciplines as well. So let's say the striking coach wants you to do this, the jiu-jitsu coach wants to do this, the wrestling coach wants you to do this. So there's not kind of like standard, everyone's on the same page. Everyone's coming from a different background as well. So I can see that can be quite challenging.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, every coach wants the best for their athlete. Yeah. But in saying that, every coach is also smashing the athlete. And there's no communication between them. And okay, well, he's trained hard in the morning he's redlining, so maybe we
dial it back a little bit.
Yeah, maybe we dial back in the afternoon and we get on the same page. And that's essentially what my job is as a strength and conditioning coach, is to manage training load and physiology, understanding biology. If we add too much stress, too fast, too long, you're going to get injured, you're going to get burnt out, you're going to get sick. So when do we need the athlete at their best? When the cage door closes behind them, or they're making that walk to the ring or the mats or whatever, So having a coaching team that are all on the same page and removing the egos and going, well, for the first 3 weeks, your job's the most important. And then you're the secondary, and then you're tertiary. And then the next block, you're going to take the lead. The next block, you're going to take the lead. Like,
it's planning out like a graph of who's going to be doing what exactly throughout, like, let's say 12-week camp, for example. So I guess that's probably one of the biggest challenges you face as a strength and conditioning coach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is the biggest, that's the biggest hurdle that I've faced.
Yeah.
And it's difficult because, the athlete can be as skilled as possible, but if the skill levels match, the person who's stronger, faster, fitter is typically going to win that fight.
Yeah.
When I do see my athletes getting hammered by their other coaches, my job really is to pull the athletes back and slow them down, give them what they need, ensure that they get to the fight in the best shape possible.
Yeah.
Injury free.
Yeah.
Ready to go. So yeah, it's been difficult to get people on the same page.
Yeah. Do you think that's more of a problem in professional MMA's overtraining? Do you think that's the biggest problem, or do you think it's other things as well? What would you say are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to managing MMA fighters like camp?
Yeah. All these guys are killers, right? Like they've got that mindset. Well,
Exactly.
I had the same mindset in the army as a rugby player as well. You know, every session, every training session in the army was a push. It was a test of will.
Yeah.
Right. We would just go until we broke down or we had nothing left. And whilst there's some benefit to building that mental and physical resilience, you know, you can't train like that all the time.
Yeah.
Otherwise you do get burnt out, you get sick, you get injured. You know, so I think we hear about the 10,000 hour rule to become a master at something. But what we don't hear about is the people who do the 10,000 hours but don't make it because they're not training intentionally or they're burnt out or whatever. We hear about the 10,000 hours, people who make it. We don't hear about the other people who don't make it. You know, I had this conversation with a couple of guys yesterday or the day before, actually. I was asking how the training was at a Muay Thai gym up in Bangkok. And he said, you know, the coaches it's just, we run 12 kilometers in the morning and then we train, and we run 6 kilometers in the afternoon and then we train and this and that and da-da-da. And it's like, we're just, every session's like, Muay Thai is pain, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, who can endure the most pain? But again, how many, and some people that works for them and they're able to withstand that and they have the resilience and they get through and they get to the top of the game. But how many people does that break?
Yeah.
How many people does that wear down? How many people does that turn off fighting? You know, that's what we don't hear about. People are focused on only the people that make it. And it's like, well, they're doing this shit, so it must work for us. And it's like, no, what about the other 20 people who fucking broke down and gave up the sport because they just couldn't take it anymore?
See,
or their body just was breaking down and they couldn't handle it anymore.
I remember when I first started jiu-jitsu, I was like, it was just after I finished university, and I was in Scotland training. That's where I first started. So there's obviously, it was like a traditionalist martial arts gym. So there's like Jeet Kune Do, there's Muay Thai, there's jiu-jitsu and stuff like that as well. So like a lot of the classes, like there'd be clustered, there'd be like a ring area where people were training and stuff like that. I remember there's this like 15, 16-year-old Scottish kid, and he was like a phenom with Muay Thai. Then he moved over to Thailand, and he was well on his way to becoming a star. And then all of a sudden he died of like dehydration running down in Phuket. Wow. Obviously he's got the bin bags around him. He's trying to cut weight and make a fight, and then obviously just obviously because of the mismanagement, he just kind of like passed down, just like heat stroke basically. So yeah, and I remember hearing another story where I'm obviously more from a grappling background, so I like reading books like Dan Gable, for example, and you saw how much he grinded. Once he became a coach, I think at one point he had to get like a double hip replacement surgery, and you can see him in crutches when he's like on the side of the ring coaching his fighters. And when he gets asked about, what do you think one of your biggest regrets were? And he just thought, I would have probably drank more water during training sessions, because they were told, if you drink water, you're weak.
Yeah, for sure, man. And that's the thing, bro. It's like I mean, there was an athlete. I'm not going to name names, but there was an athlete that approached me probably like 2 months ago for a fight camp. I said, I'll help you with the training, nutrition, recovery, weight cut, da-da-da-da-da. Name my price, and he was like, oh, it's a little bit too much. I won't employ you this time. Anyway, he's gone through the weight cutting process, and his head coach gave him a Red Bull while he's cutting weight, man. He ended up in hospital. And it's like, yeah, it might make sense in your mind.
Yeah.
You don't understand the physiology, biology to, understand what's happening in the body there. And that's what people don't understand, man. Like if you're dehydrated by, even a small amount, if I open my mouth, stick my tongue out, and I've got a little bit of white on my tongue, that's going to equate to roughly a 10% decrease in performance. So if we're dehydrated during our training sessions, then we actually start getting sloppy with our training. What you practice becomes permanent. There is something to be said about, yes, building the mental resilience of not drinking water, but there comes a point where not drinking water then becomes detrimental to your performance and your training outcomes and recovery.
Yeah. And like you said with the 10,000 hours thing as well, like obviously when you see different gyms or different camps, for example, I'm going to speak from like a grappling context, but certain people, they progress a lot faster and the results are obviously tested on the mats and stuff like that. And what I found was like you get quite a lot of the old school gyms where they just drill the same movement over and over again. And then when you go and listen to like a Lex Friedman podcast with someone like Danaher, for example, he's talking about like judo guys do a lot of like uchikomi, which means just drilling the same movement over and over and over and over and over again. And that methodology works for judo, but for jiu-jitsu it's a little bit difficult. I mean, a little bit different, obviously, because it's not like really dynamic, strong movement where you throw a guy and then their shoulder blades hit the mat and that's it. It's a lot slower. It's a lot more methodical. And I remember he just said, yeah, like most people, when they think that they're doing the work when they just keep on drilling the same movement over and over again, and they're not training for quality of movement. They're training for numbers, basically.
Quantity, man.
Yeah, exactly. And they think that equates to like quality, obviously. And then like it's just saying, 1, 2, 3, get the fuck out of here, basically. And it's just like, it was one of the funniest thing I listened to as well. And when I speak to a lot of people that progress really fast, it's the same thing. They tell me, yeah, I don't really drill. If I want to learn something new, I'll get the basic movements down, and then after that, I will try and put it to a test with people of lesser skill. And it's like Danaher says, like if you're a black belt, for example, most of your training should be done with people of lower skill level, so you can test out and work in the areas that you're weak at. And I just wanted to know what you thought about that type of training and how to kind of like implement smarter training with professional fighters, and how you found that.
Yeah, good question. Don't know which. There's a couple of things.
Yeah, sorry.
No. First one I'll talk about is, I think the training partners that you have around you is super important, man. And you kind of touched on it there. As an athlete, I want to be training with somebody who's better than me. Mm-hmm. I want to be training with people on the same level, and I want to be training with people that I'm better than. Because if I'm training with people that I'm better than, I get the opportunity to slow down and try different techniques and things like that. I also get to teach. And when you teach something, you get to learn something and learn it twice. People on the same level, that's when I can test. That's when I'm doing my sparring and things like that. People that are better than me, it's an opportunity to, stop, pause. Hey, when I get into this position, I don't know what to do from here. What would you do? What are my options? What are my routes out of here? How do I not get into this position?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember what the other things were. Sorry, man.
That happened in the other podcast a little bit. Yeah, we're just talking about how like work with professional athletes, and obviously the mentality needs to change in terms of just redlining the whole time and training smart, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that, it's like, especially with striking as well, there's head trauma, and with jiu-jitsu as well, it's a little bit like sloppy. It could be bad training partners, or it could be maybe training in the same room, and then like maybe you're standing up and someone just like gets double-legged from your side, and you end up hurting yourself as well. And that's a big thing for me as well.
That brought me back to what I was going to say. I mean, when we're in the gym, when we're training, what I've seen with most athletes out here is that they're testing all the time. Yeah. And I think we spoke about this off camera before when I was in the army. Everything was that test of will, and you can't be like that all the time. You got to train in a controlled environment, and then you test in an uncontrolled environment. Yeah. So my philosophy is train often, test seldom. Right? That means I'm bulletproofing my joints. I'm practicing skills and techniques and drills that I want to learn and improve and give myself different options for different directions and ways that I want to go. That happens in a controlled environment. Yeah. And then we go and test that in an uncontrolled environment during our sparring sessions, for example. In saying that, I don't think all sparring sessions should be done at 100%.
Oh, God, no.
I think there's a lot of benefit to, all right, in this first round, we're going to throw high volume. It's going to be very aerobic, light, fast, constant movement. Second round, let's add a little bit more power, not so much volume. Third round, all right, now we maybe pick it up a little bit and test. You shouldn't be testing every single round. I think there's a lot of benefit to, again, having good training partners, having those conversations and saying, all right, this round, let's work on this. I'm going to go southpaw this round just so I can play around with different things. So don't load up too much because you might catch me. You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of benefit to, again, having that philosophy of train often, test seldom.
Yeah. I mean, it really just depends on what kind of like culture the gym has, and like especially with the gym as well, there's a balance between being a commercial gym making money. I mean, some facilities are obviously like Olympic training centers or UFC PI centers as well, but most gyms it's like you're trying to make a little bit of money, like training white belts, and that's usually the lifeblood of a gym, for example. Even with a fitness gym as well as beginners, they just want to lose a little bit of weight, and then the little cherry on top's like working with professional fighters as well. And what I found interesting is when you look at different gyms and how they train, for example, it's like the culture top down. Sometimes it can be like, because obviously there's only like a handful of gyms in Bangkok. Obviously there's a crap ton over in Phuket as well. And then you can see who's running it and how it's ran basically. And it's really interesting. What I see with MMA gyms, for example, is eventually a gym grows, and then it just splinters. And it's very similar to jiu-jitsu gyms as well. Because once there's too many top up like black belts, for example, like you have to split. Well, it just happens basically. And I was just wondering, like, coming from like a military and rugby background, work with professional athletes where there's a constant and it's just all about the game or the professionalism. What I wanted to know was, what do you think the biggest challenges running a gym like that or working with professional athletes are in the context of MMA, coming from your background? If there's like one or two things you would that you could change now and it would just completely drastically change the chronic overtraining, the Eagles
program that I tried to build, bro.
Yeah.
It's like, here's all the problems that I've seen. Here's a solution that's going to address
Why
all
is there
those
such
things.
pushback? That's my question. If you know this is the right way to go, basically, just egos with different coaches.
Yeah, it's getting buy-in from the other coaches and the athletes as well. I mean, first of all, you need to get buy-in from the other coaches, and if they don't understand where you're coming from and your knowledge and experience, then it's difficult to get them on board, which makes it difficult to get the athletes on board, of course.
Yeah.
I think something I tried to implement at Apollo, and one of the reasons I walked away from there was because I went in there and I was like, I'm going to build a fight team. That's the first thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about making money and getting people into the gym. We need a fight team. We need athletes on the mats every single day, regardless of the fucking season.
Yeah.
And then when people walk past, they're like, I want to go and train with those guys.
Yeah.
So I understand we need to make money business model, but that's a short-term investment. For me, I'm looking at the long-term investment.
Yeah.
Let's get these young guys into the system. Let's build them up. Let's give them the support. Let's get them around the right coaches. Let's ensure that they're on a decent all-year-round training, nutrition, recovery program, so that, it's not about this camp. It's not about the next camp. It's about 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. And if you have that long-term approach, then in my mind, you're going to tick those boxes and you're going to get that short-term reward as well. However, there is a little delay in that. Yeah.
That's the problem right now with the world. The way the world is instant gratification. It's like 15-second reels. It's like not listening to like a long form podcast. It's just like 15 seconds up, and then it's like trying to get like get the emotion out of you basically. And get that dump.
Exactly. It's how can I capture this person's attention for 15 seconds before they scroll off and just forget everything you said.
Yeah.
Like I've got a weird relationship with social media. Being a sniper, man, I'd go out, do my job, and then sink back into the shadows, and nobody knows who I am. Now I kind of have to have a social media. I've pulled back from it a little bit.
It's hard because like when you have to do that kind of social media stuff, you are basically trying to sell yourself as well. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. For me, it always felt a little bit like selling my soul as well, because you had to kind of be like muffled a little bit, and and it's especially when you're trying to coach with fighters as well, like with football players, wrestlers, like just other sports, for example. There's like long-term plan down the line how you're going to develop and like what the long-term plan, etc. is. But then with fighting as well,
it's a system, man.
Yeah,
professional athletes and professional sports teams in Australia, where I come from, like my experience with professional teams, it's a system, right? And the best teams, the best organizations have the best systems.
Exactly.
Even though, like, I'm not sure if you know, maybe some of the listeners will know, Melbourne Storm in Australia, the NRL team. They've won, I think they've only been in the competition like 15 years or something, and they've probably won like 5, 6 competitions, because they have a good system. They had some of the best players in the country, in the world, all playing for the team at the same time. And then this guy left and this guy left and this guy left, and people are like, fuck man, how are they gonna survive when they've got their best players, like best players in the world, are leaving their spine of their team, and because they got a system, they just brought other people in, and it's like the team's not built around this athlete or that athlete. It's built around, you know, the game plan, and then the athletes kind of fit into that. But the game plan is also built around the athletes and vice versa.
That's the issue when it's a team sport. It's a little bit different, and especially with fighting as well. It's very different to like a professional sport, and obviously it is fighting, and there's nothing more like primal than that pretty much as well. And it is almost like instant gratification of like choking someone up or knocking someone out, doing a fight camp maybe 3 to 4 times a year, and then less as you develop and you become more valuable as a fighter as well. So it's like, it's probably like the fight culture itself as well, because you see how dirty boxing, not boxing itself, but like trying to like organize with different people, and everyone's kind of like looking to make their name off of you, or they want to get rich off of you. And then you see fighters that become bigger and bigger and bigger. Their entourage gets bigger and bigger as well, because they just want to leech off the guy. And like there's that as well, obviously. So it's like it's having the right people around. But then a lot of fighters as well, they come from most of them come from a pretty rough background. Like you get a lot of smart people that do jiu-jitsu. You know, they'll be in tech, or they'll be like X, whatever you want to call them, basically. They're just highly intelligent. But then with fighters as well, you've got to be a little bit reckless to be in the fight game, especially with MMA the way it is. I mean, back in the day, people just wanted to knock the crap out of each other, and the pay was awful. So it's, I guess it's the type of people that you get into MMA as well. Yeah, it's an interesting one. But yeah, why did you think you wanted to work with professional fighters in the end?
I didn't chase working with professional fighters. I just wanted to work with professional athletes. When I was a sniper, obviously I'm working in a small 4-man team, and you know, I trust these guys in my life. I know what I've gone through to reach that standard and get that t-shirt and become a qualified sniper, and I know that those 3 guys have also ticked those boxes and done the same thing, you know. So getting out of the army and back into the civilian space, it was difficult, man, to find those people that were willing to operate at that high of a level and have those types of standards that had just become the usual for me. It's like was what I expected when I rocked up to work, you know. So you know, I got out of the army, I applied to become a firefighter, went through that process. As I was going through that process, was over a couple of months, I was doing my PT course, and then I failed in my application for the fireys, and I couldn't apply for another year. So I was like, all right, I'll dive into this. Started coaching people, enjoyed it, and, you know, became a personal trainer. Started working with individuals. And yeah, I just missed being in that environment where people were striving to be at their best. Like as a PT, you know, I kind of had to light a fire under somebody to get them to get up and move and do the things that I was asking them to do to achieve the goals that they told me that they wanted to achieve. With athletes, there's not so much of that. Like you kind of need to pull them back a little bit. And I wanted to be in that type of environment because that's where I excel, man. You know, if I'm going over, you know, calories in, calories out, macronutrients, micronutrients, with the average person, and goal setting and mindset. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I do all the same shit with the athletes, but it's on a different level. Sometimes. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes I'm touching on those basics again, but you know, it's with an athlete, professional athletes, they've got an end state in mind. I want to become champion. I want to win the premiership. I want to represent my country. I want to blah, 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 you know. So they've already got that goal in place, and it's my job to then help guide them through that process, take them on the path and make decisions as we go down that path. Do we go left here? Do we go right here?
So basically you want extraordinary results working with extraordinary people, basically.
Let's go with that.
That
was nice.
Okay. So now you're at PJ, which is like you said, it pretty much is the best nogi gym in Thailand right now, I would say. You've got incredible people there. Obviously, you've worked with professional athletes like Peter Yan, who's he's more of a striker, let's say, but he's got really good wrestling and grappling as well. So obviously, you've got an idea of how you want to train this guy. But let's say if it was just strictly jiu-jitsu, like let's say Maga, right? Magomed Matiev, he did the pit submission at Karate Combat, for example. what would you change from, let's say, a striker strength and conditioning plan or an MMA fighter's strength and conditioning plan versus, let's say, grappling? Or is there a difference, would you say?
Yes, there is a difference when it comes to the sport that they're competing in, the rule set. But also, it really comes down to the athlete's needs analysis. What does the athlete need? I mean, my job really is to make somebody more athletic so that they can compete in their chosen sport. As a strength and conditioning coach, it doesn't really matter to me. Like I said, I initially wanted to work with rugby athletes, but then I didn't finish high school, didn't go to university, didn't have a degree. I learned everything I learned in the trenches. So I didn't have those opportunities in Australia and Tasmania at the time. And I came to Thailand to chase those opportunities. But ultimately, it comes down to the athlete's individual needs. Someone like Piotr Jan, I think we've done 8 or 9 fight camps together since he's been in the UFC. And the first couple of camps were, general base building stuff, like doing assessments. How does this guy move as an athlete? What are his strengths? What are his weaknesses? What do we need to shore up? What can we improve? And then as we had a couple of camps together, then it was more, right, who are you fighting? What's the game plan? What type of conditioning do you need? Do we need more strength? Do we need more endurance? Do we need more speed? Do we need more power? And then working towards that.
Yeah. So it's more about what the athlete needs, basically, more than like, okay, this is the sport. Yeah. So it's like, okay, that's awesome. Yeah. So this is let's run the conditioning session for explosive power. So obviously, landmine, you use that quite a lot. And this is more for striking, or is it more for rotational power?
It's more for force transfer work. So we add the band here for accommodating resistance that allows us to accelerate harder, faster, longer. We went through the rotation before. Now we're going through the push press. As you can see, body height drops, accelerate, lock out, stabilize, then control it back down, stability, focus. Yeah. And then we start combining those. Where explode, transfer force from one side to the other, drop the body height. Yeah. It's speed is a combination of contraction and relaxation. So we're exploding, transferring force across to one side, and then finishing with that lockout. Yeah, it's all about center of gravity management, force transfer.
How long are these sessions typically?
About an hour. Typically, sometimes it depends where I am in camp with these guys. This is the main work. This probably took us maybe 15, 20 minutes to get through the main work. Yeah. You'll see the sled in the background there. We actually started with some strength, stability, mobility-based work, and then this was more power development to finish the session.
What I found really interesting was an exercise you did where you put the barbell on the guy's hip bones basically, and they've got to like turn and walk down basically. I thought that was pretty interesting.
That one's brutal.
Yeah. That's
brutal, man. So rotational power, obviously loading one side and then being able to transfer and change direction, shift across. And again, this is just about creating a more athletic fighter. And I find this stuff is more beneficial than, I was going to say more beneficial than the typical strength work. But in saying that, I did mention before that earlier on through our first couple of camps was all very general base building stuff. And then for each subsequent fight became more specific for the individual, who they're fighting, what the game plan was, etc.
Right. How do you find the knowledge base with most fighters? Do you think they just kind of like train in that and they don't really know much about what they're doing, or?
In terms of strength and conditioning?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Like what the benefits are, why they're doing it, for example, because like a lot of them just like grind. So if they get told to do something, they might do something, but some of them might have like terrible form, for example, and they don't know why they're doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just curious as to like, obviously every fighter has a different base in terms of strength, like what they understand about conditioning, strength, etc. But what do you think everyone's got like an okay base layer being professional fighters, or do you think there's like a lot to catch up on for them?
individual dependent, man.
Yeah.
I've worked with some very good young professional MMA fighters, and I've seen them move in the gym, and I'm like, this dude we can increase his athleticism so easy just by doing these 3 things. You know, so I think that's a big part of the issue around strength and conditioning is people just think they just need to work hard and they'll get the benefits from it. But that's just like saying, well, I'm going to throw whatever, 100 jabs, but not pay attention to how I'm throwing those jabs. You know, I really focus on the intent when it comes to strength and conditioning, specific adaptations to impose demands. We are adaptation machines. So whatever I put into the system is what I'm going to get out of the system. And if I put in a very broad signal, then I'm going to get a very broad, but also shallow outcome. Whereas if I want to put something specific into the system, then, you know, the exercise selection, the order, the sets, the reps, the rest period, the tempos, the volume, all that stuff needs to be factored in. People just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. But the best of the best, you know, they understand that if I want to work speed and power, then I'm probably going to be in the alactic energy system or the lactic energy system and working more endurance-based work. And then when it comes to aerobic conditioning, for example, people just think they need to just run hard, run fast, get the heart rate up, get the respiratory rate up. But conditioning for me is fitting as much high-quality work into the time and the duration available as efficiently as possible at a set intensity. You know, that's when you reap the benefits from conditioning, is when you tick those boxes, you put in a very specific stimulus, and then you're going to get that stimulus back.
Yeah. Well, I'm very happy to see that you've matted out the strength and conditioning area in PGA as well. It just seemed like a big space with kind of like the jiu-jitsu coaches are busy coaching and running the mats. So it's just like you have this huge amount of space where there's a lot of potential, and it's just like trying to fit the right person in that space as well. And I was kind of happy to see that because obviously the space is huge, number one. Obviously Ben's a fighter and a coach, and the other guys are fighters and coaches as well. They can't really they bring in like third party like physios, some other coaches when they're trying to get a session in, or a few people just go in and lift a little bit. But I like to see that it's like really well structured now. How's it been working there?
Oh, good.
Yeah,
so good. Yeah, I mean the last 2 years has been. I'm actually heading home to Australia in January for a couple of months. I'm going to take a 3-month hiatus and just take my foot off the accelerator a little bit, and that's because the last 2 years I feel like I haven't got a very good return on investment. So, you know, and that's been at the expense of not seeing my friends and family. Like my niece was born, I think maybe a month before I got back from Iraq in 2007. She turned 16 like last month, and I'm like, where's that time gone? You know, so I ended up in PGA in June last year when I was stabbed in the back and pushed out of Tiger. So I ended up in PGA because I was in fight camp with Tiger's fighters, and they were fighting within 4 weeks. And I was like, okay, well, how am I supposed to do this? I spoke with Ben. Ben opened his doors to me, and at that stage, I was like, I'm going to go and build my own business. I'm going to take everything online. My strength and conditioning system that I've been teaching for 7 years, I'm going to package that up, put it into a training app. So I started doing that, and then was approached by Apollo, ended up going in there, and the plan was to build the online coaching platform and then do what I've recently done at PGA, fit that out and start running classes from there and start building an athlete factory. But then I had an opportunity to go into a gym, thought I was going to become a partner in the gym. They pulled that off the table. Yeah. It's kind of got fucked a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm back at PGA.
Yeah, I've kind of been burned like that when I was in Myanmar as well. Unfortunately, I think it's just a different idea of what you're trying to do. You're trying to maximize profits if you're a gym owner usually. And unfortunately, if you don't have buy-in or some kind of equity as well, it's like after all, you're like, if you're working with people they don't particularly have the same philosophy as, you're like, why the fuck am I doing this basically, you know?
Yeah.
And I can see where definitely.
Well, basically, like I delivered. I said I did everything that I said I was going to do, and then, you know, other people didn't deliver. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you're working at a standard and other people won't be at that standard either, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first question, performance enhancing drugs. What's your stance on PEDs in MMA or PEDs in general?
There's going to be an Olympics where PEDs are allowed, and I think that's great. I think that's awesome. I think that's going to show us what humans are capable of. And I also think it brings another element to, it's not just training, nutrition, recovery. You know, how can we run a synergistic program that's going to get this athlete peaking at the right time? In saying that, MMA striking sports, I don't think that's a good idea. You know, we've obviously got longevity, long-term health implications that are impacted by, you know,
exactly.
If you're juiced out of your gills and you're just beating down on someone's head, then, you know, that's going to have an impact on their life and longevity. For jiu-jitsu, grappling sports, I personally don't see an issue with it if there is a category where, you know, it is like it's like bodybuilding, right? You've got the natural and then you've got the steroid use. So as long as it's stated and everyone knows what's happening, then I'm okay with it.
No problem with that. Okay. So the next question is science and tradition versus tradition. How do you handle fighters or coaches who prioritize old school training methods over evidence-based approaches?
I don't work with them. I just say, hey man, this is where I'm coming from. This is my knowledge. This is my experience. This is my professionalism. If you want to work with me, then this is what I'm going to be bringing. If you're not open to that, then maybe it's best that you stick with these old school traditions.
Good answer. So,
and that comes back to what I was saying before about that athlete reaching out to me and named my price, and he's like, no, too much, blah, blah, blah. And then someone fucked up his camp and didn't get to fight anyway.
Yeah, the problem with and especially when you're coming from that professional MMA fighters or the coaches, they don't really know what the value of strength and conditioning is as well.
Oh, man.
They always get screwed over money-wise, unfortunately. Yeah, I've been there 1,000 times. Okay. Next question. Do you think some injuries are inevitable in elite MMA training, or can most be prevented?
I think if you have a smart training approach, again, periodized training, nutrition, recovery program, most injuries can be prevented. Why? Because, again, train often, test seldom. If I'm in a controlled environment, the majority of the time I'm bulletproofing my joints, so I'm doing my rehab, corrective exercise, etc., then, yeah, for the most part, I'm going to create more resilient tissues and not overtrain. In saying that, injuries are going to happen, acute injuries. My job really is to stop those acute injuries from happening by addressing chronic issues that come up from repetitive movements and things like that. And that's why there's such a benefit to having a periodized all year round training, nutrition, recovery program, so that we can tick those boxes across a year. In terms of the injuries, again, it comes down to stress management, training load management. If we add too much stress to the system, then something's going to break down. So essentially what I want to do is build, deload, reload, build, deload, reload. The more times I can do that throughout the year, then the higher my peak's going to be. Okay,
good answer. So this leads me into my next question. Ethics in fighter development. So it's is it ethical to prioritize peak performance over long-term health in fighters?
If I've got an athlete in the gym all year round and they only fight 3 or 4 times that year, then the majority of the time I'm going to be monitoring their health, tracking heart rate variability, waking heart rate, blood pressure, etc. So then I can see when it's time to push, when it's time to pull back. I know exactly where the athlete is in their training program, and then we can call audibles. All right, you're dragging your heels today, your heart rate variability is coming down, your waking heart rate's going up. Today's Friday. We were supposed to do a hard session today, but instead I want you to go away for the weekend and turn your phone off and whatever, go for a swim and blah, 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 have 3 days off, knowing that next week it's going to be a hard week before we then go through a deload process. So I think peak performance and long-term health and longevity are essentially the same thing. We spoke about Paddy Pimblett before. You know, he's one of those guys that trains really hard and dials everything in and gets shredded for his fight, but then blows out, and he's not going to be able to sustain that for long. And is he going to make it to the top with that approach? Probably not. Time will tell.
Good answer. So, gym loyalty and conflict of interests. How much influence should a head coach have on an S&C program? So, for example, like disagreements between technical coaches and strength and conditioning coaches over training priorities.
Yeah, I think the coaching team need to be on the same page. Head coach obviously has final say. in saying that, there needs to be some respect with the strength and conditioning coach and what they bring to the table, because there's things that they understand and contribute to the athlete that is not just, train harder, train more, do more. Sometimes it is about pulling the athlete back and understanding again where they are and saying, hey, this dude's 4 weeks out from a fight. Like, let's not maybe hammer him this week. Let's go through a deload process. And, there needs to be that trust and respect and integrity there, and communication. If you can communicate with the head coach, then I don't think you got any issues. But it's a difficult one.
Okay. Values and compromise. What are your non-negotiables for when you're working with anyone, whether it's gyms, athletes, or clients?
Non-negotiables. Well, again, trust.
Yeah.
Respect. Integrity, accountability. First of all, like, my athletes need to trust me. So when I do say, hey man, like, your waking heart rate's a little high, your heart rate variability is trending down, it's been doing that for the last 2 weeks, I recommend you go and take the next 3 days off so we can, kick off next week on the front foot instead of, being on the back foot for the next couple of weeks. And again, respect from the athlete and the other coaches. I think that's an important ingredient. Integrity, man, and authenticity. I've rubbed people the wrong way at times because I do come from that military background, and if I don't agree with something, I'll say that I don't agree with it, and but I'll also state why. I'm not afraid of conflict.
Yeah.
But if at the end of the day, my job is to, ensure that the athlete is at their best when they need to be. So, sometimes that's going to rub people the wrong way, but it is what it is. If you've got respect within the team, then everything's taken on board and everyone has a voice. But I've been involved in camps where, your voice isn't really heard and it's kind of paid off, and it's just like, well, that you just go and see that dude if you want to get stronger. It's like, that's like, this much of what I do.
I've seen that before as well. Yeah. Good answer. So last one before we just close. Being in the role that you've been in, what has been the one thing you've enjoyed the most and the one thing you've hated the most?
The one thing I've hated the most is that that conflict between the skills coaches and everyone involved in the athletes team.
It's not worth the hassle, is it? Sometimes.
Oh man, yeah. It's sometimes I just take a step back and go, it's not worth being involved in that. I'm just gonna, I will just get this athlete stronger and faster and like not have a voice. But again, it means I'm only using a small portion of my skills and expertise. So best thing about the job is when you do have that alignment, when you do have people on the same page and everyone does have a voice and there is that trust and respect and integrity and accountability and everyone's working together to have the athlete peaking at the right time. It's not about the egos. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's not about, I think this and this person thinks this. It's like, what does the athlete need right now? And being a part of that journey, as I mentioned before, Piotr Jan, I've been in camp with him 8 or 9 times, and being a part of that process and watching him grow as an athlete, as a fighter, and knowing that I've contributed in a small way to what he's gone on to do, and I think that's probably one of the most gratifying things is watching your athletes succeed and do everything they said that they wanted to do, live out their dreams essentially. It's pretty cool.
Good answer. Okay. So you've already said that you're going to be going off to Australia for 3 months in January. Apart from that, what are your future plans? What goals do you have next?
I would like to build a performance institute, athlete factory, where I'm working with primarily professional athletes and teaching them this system. Not just getting them in for a 4-week camp or a 6-week camp, 8-week camp or whatever. I want people in the system all year round, and build them as athletes, build them as fighters, and then I've got a set number of guys that other people are going to fly in to train with as well. So that has been the ultimate goal for the last 7.5 years since I've been in Thailand. Whether or not that works out yet to be seen. That's one of the reasons why I want to go home and take a break, spend some time with friends and family, and also throw some other options on the table. I was in when I was in camp with Piotr Jan before he fought Corey Sandhagen for the interim UFC bantamweight title. I was in Dubai, and one of my good mates that I played army rugby with, played rugby at a high level. He's a professional strength and conditioning coach, worked with a number of professional teams in Australia as well. He threw it out there and asked me to go to Japan and work with the professional teams over there. And obviously I said no to that. I feel like I'm in the right place in Thailand, building this thing that I want to do. And then things kind of fell apart after that. So, you know, as I mentioned, man, I don't necessarily need to be working with professional fighters. I just want to work with professional athletes. I want to be in a team environment. I mean, one thing I will say is, you know, I know I'm good at what I do. And there hasn't been many times in the last 7 years since I've been in Thailand where I have looked up to, there's been a few exceptions here and there, but, you know, some of the shit that I've seen from head coaches and some allegedly professionals in some of these environments, like, fuck, man, this is like amateur shit. Yeah. You know, so I need to be around... Dude, I need to be around people that are better than me. Yeah. I need to be around people that I can look up to. I need to be around people that I can learn from and like consider as a mentor that's going to bring me up rather than bring me down. And unfortunately, I feel like I've been around people that have brought me down for a long time. I've had a few people that have like contributed to the growth. And
you're lucky in a few situations, but if you're like... certain places you end up being the golden standard, and then when everyone is kind of like below that, it can be really frustrating. Especially
progress.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially like it's even with the jiu-jitsu gym. If you're the top dog in the gym, like you're not progressing. You're just like
because you got nobody better than you that you can train with,
and it can be an issue.
I feel like that's where I'm at, man. I've had a great career. I built my brand, built my reputation, built my name. But I also feel like I've reached a ceiling, and that's one of the reasons why I went into Apollo, was because I thought I'd have those resources and the support to do the things that I said that I was going to do, and I did those things, but still didn't get the support. So, you know, I end up stepping away and just going, all right, what's next? I'm just going to go back and do my own thing, and that's one of the reasons why I want to get back to Australia and potentially just take my foot off the accelerator and see what's available, and you know, see what comes up. Stop chasing shit, see what comes to me, and go from there.
Good answer.
But I want to be around people that bring out the best in me, and that is having people that I can look up to and respect and, you know, aspire to be like. Someone I'm inspired by, people that, you know, can contribute to my knowledge, my expertise, and my passion for helping athletes be at their best.
I understand. Good answer. And then my last question is, who would you like to thank?
I did mention that I have been pushing shit uphill the entire time, but there have been a number of athletes along the journey, and a few coaches here and there as well that have been very supportive. So anyone that's really given me an opportunity, Piotr Jan, man, like that dude's I'll always be indebted to that guy, because I did come, as I mentioned, I came from a military background, rugby background. I knew what I was doing in terms of strength and conditioning, but hadn't been proven in the combat sports world. In saying that, as a soldier, I'm a fucking combat athlete. You know, like, so he gave me an opportunity very early on in my career when I first arrived in Thailand, you know, and that my clients are my guinea pigs, man. You know, so I was taking everything that I'd learned in the trenches and through those different aspects of military, rugby, personal training, etc., and then putting it all together with this dude who's got a dream to become UFC champion. You know, so I was testing out these systems and implementing things that I was learning, updating, reviewing, just going through that process of this works, this doesn't work. And what I realized was, if I have someone like that 2 to 3 days a week, you know, I'm not fucking around with some of this and some of this and, you know, junk work. Essentially, I'm trying to squeeze as much high quality work into that training session as possible. It's not about doing more. It's like, here's this one tool that I can do that's going to tick all these boxes, and I can use that as a warm up, like skill development, etc. So probably too many people to name off the top of my head, but anyone that's supported me and has bought into the system and trusts me as a coach and essentially gives me the reins to, you know, run their program the way that I see fit to have them where they need to be.
Okay, good answer. And Is there any thing that you want to shout out, like any kind of websites, Instagram accounts? Obviously, we'll add them in the caption for the YouTube video as well, but is there anything that you want to...
My website's up and running, but it needs to be updated. I'm in the process of building out training programs, which I have in the background. I'm just putting it all into a training app, and it's an absolute monster, man. So it's taken me a little bit of time, but the website is www.coachbykobes.com, Instagram @coach_Kobes, YouTube channel Live Train Perform, and podcast is also Live Train Perform.
Okay.
That's probably the main channels.
All right. Thank you very much.
Cheers, dude. Appreciate it.
Thank you.